Engines running. Launch commit. Liftoff. The tower is clear.
For 3,000 years, men gazed at the far-off moon and dreamed of going there someday, lifted by balloons perhaps, or riding in a carriage drawn by swans, or wafted magically on the rising dew from some enchanted meadow. But it was all just a dream, all purest fantasy. Until in 1961, someone said,
"I believe we should go to the moon."
John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, proposing to Congress what was to become the greatest scientific technological effort ever undertaken by any nation in time of peace.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
Kennedy offered the moon trip as an imperative that had nothing to do with a race into space.
Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share.
But there was a race, and in that race at that time, the United States was faring poorly. 43 days before Kennedy took his moon proposal to Congress, this electrifying announcement from across the sea.
Говорит Москва. Работают все радиостанции Советского Союза. Московское время 10 часов 2 минуты. Передаем сообщение ТАСС о первом в мире полете человека в космическое пространство.
Radio Moscow, April 12, 1961, announcing the first manned orbital spaceflight. Another first in a long and, for America, disheartening line of Soviet firsts. And then from space, this voice. Yuri Gagarin, reporting triumphantly on his condition in the course of a one-orbit flight around the world, a flight that opened the era of manned space travel.
Now it is time to take longer strides, time for a great new American enterprise, time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth.
At the time Kennedy proposed the moon landing, there had been only a single brief suborbital flight by an American, astronaut Alan Shepard's famous AOK mission, up and down in 15 minutes. Then 9 months later, the unforgettable orbital mission of John Glenn, which captured the world's imagination as the Russian flights had never done, because it was all out in the open, in real time, from liftoff to splashdown.
This is Friendship 7. I'll try to describe what I'm in here. I am in a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. I never saw anything like it. They're coming by the capsule, and they look like little stars, a whole shower of them coming by.
In the months that followed Glenn's Mercury flight, things were happening at a furious pace. By September of 1962, another orbital mission had been flown. The rocket and spacecraft for still another were on the launching pad. A whole new project called Gemini had been started, and all the major contracts for Apollo moon hardware had been let. America was on the way, no mistake about it. And at the new space capital of the free world, John Kennedy gave a progress report and answered some of the whys that a few people were beginning to ask.
It is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. But this city of Houston, this state of Texas, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
Kennedy reaffirmed his conviction that the way would not be easy, but that the rewards would be great.
Only if the United States occupies a position of preeminence can we help decide whether this new ocean will be a sea of peace or a new terrifying theater of war. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. The great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
1962, 63, 64. Slowly across the land, the fabric of Project Apollo began to take shape. In Louisiana, an outmoded white elephant of a World War II airplane factory that had lain idle for nearly 20 years is transformed into a surgically clean aerospace workshop for the fabrication of the biggest rocket the world had ever seen. In Florida, swamps are drained, pilings driven, scaffolding erected for the largest building in the world, the Vehicle Assembly Building for rockets to the moon. And 3 miles away, the jumping-off place for Apollo 11 in a day still years in the future, Moonport Launch Pad 39A. And as hundreds of thousands of men and women fell to the task that had been set by a president now dead, it was at last apparent that Apollo really was more than a dream. And the new president, Lyndon Johnson, reaffirmed the goal.
We intend to land the first man on the surface of the moon. And we intend to do this in the decade of the 60s.
America was taking longer strides, as Jack Kennedy had said, but still the Soviets were ahead. By the end of 1964, Russian cosmonauts had flown 7 missions, one 5 days in duration, one involving a woman, one with a crew of 3. And all America had to show was Project Mercury, 2 suborbital flights, 4 orbital, none as much as a day and a half in duration. But a turn in the tide was at hand, and beginning in 1965, the United States drew ahead of the Russians in space, never to be seriously challenged again. The last great bit of Soviet one-upmanship came in March of 1965, just a week before the scheduled launch date of the first manned flight in Project Gemini. Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov, one of the 2 men in a spacecraft called Voskhod 2, took a walk in space. 3 months later, an American astronaut duplicated this feat, the last bit of catching up the United States would have to do. And this historic exchange took place between a man on the ground and another in orbit high above the southern United States.
I don't even know exactly where we are, but it looks like we're about over Texas again.
Jimmy 4, Houston, Capcom.
Matter of fact, it looks like Houston down below us.
Jimmy 4, Houston, Capcom.
Hey, Gus, I don't know if you're reading, but we're right over Houston. Look, right out and look.
Jimmy 4, Houston.
See what flight director's got to say.
The flight director says get back in.
Well, this is Jim. What, got any message for us?
Jimmy 4, get back in.
Edward H. White II, America's first spacewalker, exulting over the beauty of a sight that he, alone among all Americans, had beheld. And urgently from the ground, the voice of capsule communicator Virgil Gus Grissom, the first man in the world ever to fly in space twice. These two voices were stilled, less than 2 years later, by the worst disaster in the annals of space. The shocking, tragic, and as it turned out, utterly needless fire on launching pad 34. The date, January 27, 1967. The cost, 3 lives. Grissom, the commander, White, the second in command, and rookie Roger B. Chaffee. The trio selected to be the first to fly an Apollo mission, hopefully on the 21st of February, 1967. For a while in those bleak early months of 67, it seemed that the whole Apollo program, and not just a single spacecraft, had gone up in flames. And even the strange coincidence 3 months later of a Russian cosmonaut's death in a space accident did nothing to dispel the shock and horror of the Apollo fire. But in space, as on Earth, life goes on, and the momentum behind Apollo was such that the project could only be slowed, not stopped. 8 flights in Gemini after White's walk in space had already given America some enviable experience in sailing this new ocean. And new names emerged that were to become familiar throughout the world. Borman and Lovell, world record holders for sustained endurance flight. Schirra and Stafford, first rendezvous in space. Armstrong and Scott, first orbital docking, and the first space emergency.
We were just barely able to hold our own, but the rates were too excessive for an unknown, so we continued to attempt to send ACS off, cycle that, and at the same time check our switch position. Roger. We switched to tried to turn our own space control system off, and the combination continued to wind up, so we had to go back on before the rates became intolerable.
Young and Collins, new space altitude record. Lovell and Aldrin, a record for sustained walking and working in space. Thus were the men for the moon trained. And when Project Gemini ended 2 months before the Apollo fire, the United States had 19 experienced astronauts with a total of nearly 2,000 hours of time in their space logbooks. A 4-to-1 advantage over a Soviet program that at last seemed to be running out of gas. And still the push went on. Relentlessly, the moon was put under science's magnifying glass with the flights of such wonderful machines as Ranger, Surveyor, and Orbiter, so that in the end, when men were finally ready to go, the whole moon had been mapped with great accuracy, even the side which until Christmas Eve of 1968 no man had beheld with his own eyes. One of the early lunar explorers was Ranger 9, which gave mankind its first live television show from the moon as it plunged toward the crater Alphonsus in 1965.
20 seconds to go. Pictures look good. Each picture jumps you closer to the surface. We've impacted.
It took 20 months and an estimated $700 million to correct the problems laid bare by the Apollo disaster. But finally, the project was up to speed again. 2 unmanned test flights of the mighty Saturn V gave NASA the confidence it needed to turn on the go signal at last. And in October of 1968, Walter Schirra, veteran of both the Mercury and Gemini programs, along with 2 rookies named Don Isley and Walter Cunningham, took an 11-day ride in Earth orbit, a mission called Apollo 7, which the official record keepers class as a 101% success. There were some memorable moments of high good humor on that flight, like this one, when the onboard television camera was turned on for the first time.
Hey, we got you. I can see Isley talking there. Hey, Don, turn your head to the right. There you go. Hey, you're picking up. I can read it now. Just a minute. It says from that lovely Apollo something. You guys should write high atop something. Looks good. I can see Wally Hamlet now, and Don has a smile on his face, and there's Walt. The definition is pretty good down here. I can see the center hatch. Actually, I'm amazed. It looks real good. Hey, Don, how about saying something since you're panned?
Say again?
Hey, I can read you. I can see you loud and clear. Really looks good. I'm amazed.
We're coming in heads down. You want us to point?
Lean back a little bit. You're too close to the camera. There you are. We'll have Cecil B. de Stafford down here directing.
You forgot to shave this morning, Isley. Lost my razor.
Yeah, some of the reproductions here are real good. I can look out through Wally's rendezvous window. And I can see the coas up there, the orbrate ball.
Right down the Gulf Coast.
Okay, what's the next one? A little closer, Wally. It says keep those cards coming. Keep those cards and letters coming in, folks. It's loud and clear.
And then the flight to the moon, a bold step that rivals Apollo 11 itself. The Christmas-time mission of Apollo 8 and the unforgettable sound of Bill Anders, Jim Lovell, and Frank Borman reading the opening verses of the book of Genesis that tell the story of creation.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness.
And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day.
God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
They saw close up, those Apollo 8 astronauts, what no man had ever seen before. The lunar surface from 69 miles, the hidden back of the moon. And to Jim Lovell, it looked like this.
The vast loneliness up here of the moon is awe-inspiring, and it makes you realize just what you have back there on Earth. The Earth from here is a grand oasis of the big vastness of space.
The world waited in silence early on Christmas morning to learn whether Apollo 8 would come out of moon orbit and head back home to Earth, and it did. And for nearly 3 days, the Earth watched itself grow steadily bigger on television screens. And then finally, in the pre-dawn hours over the Pacific, a jet passenger plane saw a shaft of light dart across the sky and watched the fireball of Apollo 8 streak through the upper atmosphere toward a safe and happy ocean splashdown. And shortly after, President Johnson echoed other Americans' thoughts.
You've seen what man has really never seen before. You've taken all of us, all over the world into a new era. And my thoughts this morning went back to more than 10 years ago in the Pedernales Valley when we saw Sputnik racing through the skies, and we realized that America had a big job ahead of it It gave me so much pleasure to know that you men have done a large part of that job.
The Apollo 8 astronauts could not have made a lunar landing if they had wanted to because their spaceship carried no LEM, no lunar module equipped to make a moon touchdown. The first flight of a LEM with men aboard in Earth orbit, not near the moon, came in March, and we heard again the voice of an exhilarated spacewalker, Rusty Schweikert, alone on the porch of Spider, the Apollo 9 lunar module, as Dave Scott in Gumdrop photographed and talked to him.
Oh boy, what a view. It really is. There's the moon right over there. Very good. Why don't you tail over the camera or something? Over the camera? Oh, there's Baja, California. Oh, very pretty.
Then the tricky business of rendezvous and docking, carried out competently but not without difficulty by the Apollo 9 commander Jim McDivitt, as Dave Scott gave him calm words of advice and encouragement.
Now you're coming in. That's good. There you go. I think you got a handle on it now. But it keeps disappearing. Now you're looking pretty good. Right. Top capture. Really good. Okay. Let's get it lined up. Okay, why don't you do it? I can't tell where it is. We're free now. Good show, Spider. Yeah, it was a very nice docking. That wasn't a docking, that was an eye test.
Apollo 7, Apollo 8, Apollo 9, 3 down, 2 to go to the moon. In May, the memorable, exciting, and utterly delightful flight of Charlie Brown and his pup Snoopy, the most daring flight ever attempted, a low-altitude pass over the surface of another world. Tom Stafford piloting, Gene Cernan chattering away down there among the rocks and boulders.
Oh, Houston, this is Snoopy.
Right, Snoop, go ahead.
Get going, we is down among them, Charlie.
Roger, I hear you weaving your way up the freeway. Can you give me a post-burn report, over?
Yeah, as soon as I get my breath.
The test was passed. The last preliminary satisfactorily carried out. The way completely clear at last for the real goal of Project Apollo. And finally, in June of 1969, the green light was flashed for Apollo 11. The man ultimately responsible for that go decision was Space Administrator Thomas Paine, a scientist who took over the top NASA job just about the time manned Apollo flights were beginning. Almost on the eve of the Apollo 11 mission, in an exclusive interview in his Washington office, Dr. Paine gave this summary of progress to date in the conquest of space.
We've come a long way in the 8 years of the Apollo program. You well remember the small 4-pound Vanguard satellite, the fact that we can now talk in terms of 100,000 pounds orbiting the moon is a good indication of how far we've come. I think beyond that it's a people thing. We have trained a whole generation of space scientists, space engineers, space production workers. We've involved American industry, American university, the people in our NASA laboratories, young people. And America has, I think, matured as a space power in this 8 years. The real message of the Apollo 11 mission is the fact that we can now, for the first time, undertake to sail out on what President Kennedy called the new ocean of space. We can pass across to the distant shores and land there, and we can climb down from our spaceship and walk on the surface, and then we can return to the planet Earth. This is the real message of Apollo 11. It demonstrates that we have become a spacefaring nation. Beyond that, in a more philosophical sense, I think perhaps that Apollo 11 means that for the first time, life as we know it here on Earth has progressed beyond the confines of this planet to other parts of the solar system. First men, but really all terrestrial life can undoubtedly move on out and find a foothold in other parts of the solar system. And that's very clearly a fundamental breakthrough which changes the whole destiny of mankind, in my opinion.
3 men, 2 spacecraft, 1 rocket. Destination, Moon. The rocket, a monster tall as a skyscraper, heavy as a Navy destroyer, powerful as a fleet of airplanes. The spacecraft, one named Columbia, to carry the trio into lunar orbit and later bring them safely home. The other, an ungainly, spindly-legged contraption named Eagle, destined to land lunar pioneers on the surface of the moon. And the men, what of them? The flesh and blood component of this incredible complex of hardware and software. Who are they? These lunar astronauts of Apollo 11. All 3 had been in space before, but to most people, they remained relatively unknown until a news conference in Houston 11 days before liftoff, when they sat in an isolation booth on the stage of the Manned Spacecraft Center's auditorium and fielded questions from reporters. Neil Armstrong, civilian, 38 years of age.
The objective of this flight is precisely to take man to the moon, make a landing there, and return. That is the objective.
Michael Collins, Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, 38 years of age.
Although I'm called the center seat man, in fact, I don't ride in the center seat. I ride in either the right-hand seat for launch or the left-hand seat for the burns, entry, and the other major flight plan events.
And Edwin Aldrin, Jr., Air Force Colonel, 39 years of age.
We'll be picking up where the Apollo 10 flight left off when they did their phasing maneuver. And at this point, after module coming down in the descent orbit, we'll be igniting the descent engine for the first time under a long burn condition.
A man who knows the Apollo 11 astronauts well, Dr. Thomas Paine, the administrator of NASA, talked about the crew just a short while before the flight.
The Apollo 11 crew I would characterize as being some of the best and most competent pilots that we've got. I don't think there's an astronaut in the space program that has a greater competence, for example, than Buzz Aldrin. He's a superb pilot. Mike Collins, I would also characterize as being the kind of person, if I were going on a mission myself to the moon, and I would certainly feel very good having Mike Collins along with me, and knowing that he was up there in the command module would certainly increase my confidence. Tremendously capable, cool character. As far as Neil Armstrong goes, who at present plans go through, would be the first man to land on the surface of the moon. I think Neil is characterized by a great breadth of competence. Neil has flown about every kind of aircraft that flies. He's flown in the space program now with great distinction, including, you may recall, service in our X series of very advanced aircraft. I think that Neil is an excellent choice for a fellow to handle the problems involved in getting out there and being the first man to operate on the moon's surface.
Buttoned into their spacecraft at the top of the Saturn V rocket on Pad 39A that morning in July, the 3 Apollo 11 astronauts waited for the countdown to the moment of truth.
This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control. We are go for Apollo 11. The Apollo mission, the flight to land of the first men on the moon. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower clear.
And at this fiery, thunderous instant, the tireless efforts of thousands for over a decade and the dreams of millions throughout the centuries converged as the majestic Saturn V rocket catapulted man into history and mankind into the future. On July 16, 1969, at exactly 9:32 a.m., the heart of the whole world stopped momentarily as 3 American astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Michael Collins, left a world that would probably never again be the same and rocketed across the cosmos toward man's first landing on another celestial body, the moon. The epic journey of Apollo 11 had begun. The next 3.5 days found Apollo 11 soaring through the heavens. And while the feats of man and technology were performed without a flaw, the eyes and ears of the world followed the spacecraft as it was shot into and out of Earth orbit, and then thrust into its lunar trajectory. We marveled as the crew delicately maneuvered the separation and docking of the command module, codenamed Columbia, and the lunar module, the LEM, codenamed Eagle, and then send the remaining stage of the Saturn V rocket into solar orbit. We waited patiently as Apollo 11 coasted for 2 days, confidently homing in on its lunar target, on the 3rd day achieve lunar orbit, and while harnessing lunar gravity, remain in orbit around the moon for the next 24 hours. Finally, on the 4th day, the dramatic separation of Columbia and Eagle as the Apollo 11 mission reaches the threshold of man's most monumental achievement. At approximately 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, with Michael Collins orbiting the moon in the Columbia, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin began the Eagle's descent toward the moon.
Roger, Eagle, contact.
Roger, how does it look?
The Eagle has wings.
Eagle, Houston, we rig you now. You're a go for PDI, over.
Roger, understand.
We're go, same type, we're go. 60 seconds.
Lights on. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 20, down a half.
30 seconds.
Forward, just. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Mode control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Houston, that may have seemed like a very long final phase. The auto-targeting was taking us right into a football field-sized crater with a large number of big boulders and rocks for about 1 or 2 crater diameters around it. And it required us gun in P-66 and flying manually over the rock field to find a reasonably good area.
Sounds good to us, Tranquility. Be advised there are lots of smiling faces in this room and all over the world, over.
Well, there are 2 of them up here.
Roger, it was a beautiful job, you guys.
And don't forget one in the command module.
Roger.
Now, we'll get to the details of what's around here, but it looks like a collection of just about every variety of shape, angularity, granularity, but every variety of rock you could find. The color is, well, it varies pretty much depending on how you're looking relative to the zero phase point. There doesn't appear to be too much of a general color at all. However, it looks as though some of the rocks and and boulders, of which there are quite a few in the near area. Looks as though they're going to have some interesting colors to them, over.
Roger, copy.
Houston, this is Tranquility. We're standing by for a go for cabin depress, over.
Tranquility Base, this is Houston. You are go for cabin depressurization. Go for cabin depressurization.
The hatch is coming open. Okay, Houston, I'm on the porch.
Roger, Neil. And we're getting a picture on the TV. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Neil, we can see you coming. I'm at the foot of the ladder. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. As the surface is fine and powdery, I can pick it up loosely with my toe. It does adhere in fine layers, like powdered charcoal, to the sole and sides of my boot. I only go in a small fraction of an inch, maybe an eighth of an inch, but I can see the footprints of my boots and the treads in the fine sandy particles. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of the United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
Now I want to back up and partially close the hatch. Making sure not to lock it on my way out. Okay, I'm on the top step and I can look down over the RCU and landing gear pad. It's a very simple matter to hop down from one step to the next.
Yes, I found it to be very comfortable, and walking is also very comfortable.
There's a slight tendency, I can see now, to backwards due to the soft, very soft texture.
You're standing on a rock, big rock there now.
I say that the rocks are rather slippery. You have to be careful that you're leaning in the direction you want to go, otherwise you much at the edge of that crater is rather
that's soft. Real soft there, isn't it?
Hey Neil, didn't I say we might see some purple rocks?
Find the purple rocks?
Yep. Neil is now unveiling the plaque.
It says, "Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." It has the crew members' signatures and the signature of the President of the United States.
Yes, indeed. They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface. Neil and Buzz, the President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over.
That would be an honor.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done. and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor and privilege for us to be here representing not only the United States, but men of peace of all nations, and with interest and a curiosity and with a vision for the future. Honor for us to be able to participate here today.
Thus was history made, and thus was a nation's rendezvous with destiny fulfilled. As John F. Kennedy had said in those long ago days in 1961, before there was a moon program.
Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share.
And now, Apollo 11 is history. And this is not the end, but only the barest beginning. Where do we go from here? Space Administrator Payne has the answer. An answer that must grip the imagination of anyone who has ever wondered what lies over the hill just ahead.
In the short range, we're planning to follow up the Apollo 11 mission with 3 additional trips to the moon. These will land in highland areas as well as the mare areas, will land in a configuration on the surface of the moon such that the experiments that we leave behind, and particularly the seismic detectors, will give us a network on the surface of the moon so that we will get more than just the sum of the scientific information back from our stations, but we'll get additional information because of the simultaneous feedback that we can get now from the moon. After the initial Apollo 11 mission, followed by, we hope, 3 additional landings, we're planning 6 more, which will go to spots of high scientific interest on the moon. Some of these very fascinating areas which are thought to have exhibited volcanic activity. Some of these areas which seem to bear some evidence that water may once have existed on the surface of the moon. Some of the areas at the bottom of the craters which expose the deep interior of the moon to our view. Areas which are of the maximum scientific interest. On the basis of these, perhaps as many as 10 trips to the moon, we should be able to form a judgment whether in the medium and longer range time we should be thinking in terms of establishing a lunar base. Let me just mention one interest that we have in it. It would give us a remarkably effective site for a radio telescope, which would then have a baseline with radio telescopes on Earth of 240,000 miles, you see. It would give us a wonderful place to explore the early history of the Earth before all of the erosion took place. It gives us an opportunity to explore a planet without an atmosphere, and many other things which I won't go into. Let me move to our medium range plans. We have now, in the planning and preliminary hardware phase, our Apollo application program, which is to use some of our leftover Apollo hardware to produce a prototype, if you like, of a space station. It'll be a place where astronauts can operate in a very large container, some 20 feet in diameter, 50 feet long. A place where we can carry out scientific observations using telescopes of the surface of the sun. A place where we can learn many of the things that we have to know before our engineers can design a space station. And then, in the longer range, lies the space station. A space station which would be, in effect, an artificial moon, orbiting several hundred miles above the Earth instead of hundreds of thousands of miles. A place where scientists could go to work in high-energy physics and study particles with energies which we cannot attain with any of the accelerators that have been built here on Earth. Be able to study the stars without the screening of the Earth's atmosphere. Be able to look down at the Earth, at the oceans, at the agricultural lands, at the forests, at the mineral wealth, and all of the things which go into making up the world's weather. Observing all of these from space. and being able to do experiments in the zero gravity and in artificial gravities, which cannot be performed on the surface of Earth. The space station, we feel, is a key to not only man living for long times in space, but also beyond that to travel to the planets. If we can keep men alive for as long as a year or two in space stations, it will be a relatively straightforward matter to put the thrusting devices on it, which will move such a station on out to orbit to Mars, and to use lunar landing type devices to reach the surface.
Many steps remain before these long-range goals can be achieved. Apollo 11 was only the first of these steps, but a giant step. To a plane on the moon, where today stands a flat-topped monument to man's ingenuity, a monument with an inscription that reads, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon. July 1969 AD."